And whether you're watching spacecraft telemetry or parsing security logs in a SOC environment, the skill is the same. Not faster reaction, but better judgment. Because in both space and cybersecurity, the hardest part is not seeing the signal, it's knowing when it's just noise.
The Little Root Lab is a homegrown, self-learning journey into IT and cybersecurity, narrated by Simon Arnold. It is being built from the ground up, documenting progression through systems, networking, and SOC concepts as it develops, including the mistakes, the learning process, and the real-world growth that comes with it. It is hoped that viewers find value in the series and are able to take something useful from the journey as it unfolds. Enjoy.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Little Root Lab, and this evening takes a turn in a different direction. It actually takes the turn into the direction of space, and welcome back. And we're going to be opening up this episode in association with a SOC Tier 1 reference points really for Artemis in orbit, thinking like a SOC Tier 1 analyst in space. So welcome back, and for all of you that don't know me that very well, you know, space is very important to me. I find it absolutely fascinating. I'm reading a lot about the subject, and I'm not sure whether you've heard about Artemis II. So let's go through it, shall we, and just intertwine it with cybersecurity. So on April the 1st, 2026, so not long ago actually, something left Earth. Not a simulation, not a test payload, not an unmanned probe. A crewed spacecraft carrying 4 astronauts launched from Florida aboard NASA's Space Launch System. And I don't know whether you know, but it was a completely mixed crew. It didn't just have American astronauts on there. It had, you know, different nation on there as well. So it wasn't just purely American there. And, you know, its destination wasn't orbit. Its destination was the moon. And for the first time in over half a century, humans were leaving Earth's gravitational safety net and heading back into deep space, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. But from another perspective, a systems perspective, something else was happening. A critical system had just changed state, and now everything depended on telemetry. The real system that we're observing in my SOC lab is that I've been working with Wazuh Manager setup. No dashboards, no visual shortcuts, just raw alerts, logs flowing in, right? There's no better place for me than to be on the command line. You know, I don't need a GUI. It's kind of like, just give me the frickin' data and I could tap that in all day and be as happy as Larry, you know. But at first it can feel like noise, especially when you haven't got a stable system. But thousands of lines of system activity that don't immediately mean anything. But slowly you start to see the structure. And that's when I started thinking about NASA's Artemis II mission. Not as a space mission, but as a live, high critically system under observation. Because once Artemis II left Earth orbit, it became exactly that. A system generating continuous telemetry across an environment where intervention is limited, delayed, and extremely expensive. So what is Artemis II? What is it actually? I don't know whether you know, but Artemis II is the first crewed mission of NASA's modern lunar program, operated by NASA, of course. And when it launched on April the 1st, 2026 from Kennedy Space Center, using the Space's Launch System rocket, you know, inside the Orion spacecraft were 4 astronauts: Reed Wiseman, the commander, Victor Clover, the pilot, and Christina Koch, mission specialist, and Jeremy Hansen from Canadian Space Agency mission specialist. This is where I said earlier that, the spaceship just didn't go up with all American astronauts. And Reed Wiseman, I think, is also called PTI or something else like that. It's amazing when you actually hear it on the dialogue just before the launch. But their mission was not to land on the moon, but to fly around it, which is ultimately cool. A lunar flyby, I would say. But a full deep space test with humans on board, it's just unprecedented. It's fantastic that it's happening again. So the mission lasted roughly 10 days, and it validated something critical: that humans, spacecraft and mission control systems can operate reliably outside of the Earth orbit. I don't know whether you know, but Artemis tested quite a few things, to be honest. It tested life support systems in deep space. It tested navigation and trajectory correction, communication under increasing latency, radiation exposure in lunar space, and spacecraft autonomy when real-time control is impossible. Isn't that just really freaking cool? But it ended, fortunately, with a really safe splashdown in the Pacific Ocean on April the 10th as well. And I can't remember who was doing the commentary. There were a couple of what was it, from the Planetary Agency that actually doing the interviews that day. And what they were saying is, it's one thing, watching a movie on television or whatever, but they found it unbelievably nerve-wracking to actually see, number one, a space rocket just take off. That's one thing, but when you've got 4 people on there again, it's it can get really nerve-wracking. And of course with Columbia, when we all watch Columbia, if you're of my age as well, that was disastrous, and then we had to go to school. But during the mission, what mattered most wasn't the destination; it was the stream of telemetry. But if you can see it, like, telemetry are just logs in space, and in cybersecurity, especially in SOC environment, you learn quickly that systems don't speak in explanations; they speak in events, and that's exactly what Artemis II produces. Live support readings, navigational adjustments, signal strength, subsystem status, timing delays. It is in essence a continuous log stream from deep space, just like in Wazuh. Most of it is normal, some of it is noise, and only a small fraction represents something meaningful. Let's look at the 3 states of signal. Whether you're analysing a spacecraft or a Linux server, every single signal falls into 3 categories. You've got, number 1, you've got normal noise, which is expected system behaviour, routine telemetry updates, stable subsystem readings, predictable variations in performance. Nothing is broken, nothing is wrong, and the system is simply alive. Okay? It's the rudimentary life of a SOC analyst. False positives, which we touched on in the last episode. Events that look alarming in isolation but make sense in context. A temporary communication delay during Earth-Moon transit. A sensor mismatch that self-corrects within seconds. A planned system transition that appears like failure if you don't know the mission timetable. And this is where Tier 1 analysts spend most of their time not detecting danger, but removing false interpretation. Let's look at the real anomalies though. They're rare, but they are really critical. You've got sustained telemetry loss beyond expected communication windows, multiple subsystem failures occurring simultaneously, navigation inconsistencies that do not self-correct, and you've got power or thermal irregularities that persist over time. And if you've listened to my earlier podcasts, I was really having huge amounts with basically, the thermal throttling on my MacBook Pro running Metasploit, I basically blew up my GPU on my Samsung monitor for 3 hours. It was steaming. I thought we were going to have a fire at Christmas time. It was nuts. So what I've just said are escalation events, and this is where Tier 2 takes over. This is where escalation from Tier 1 to Tier 2 is vitally important. Let's talk about the Tier 1 decision loop. So every alert, whether from Wazuh logs or spacecraft telemetry, follows the same reasoning cycle. What's changed? Is this expected behaviour for the system state? Is it isolated or part of a broader pattern? And finally, does this require escalation? Most of the time the answer is no, and that is the part that people underestimate. Because the job is not reacting to everything, it's filtering reality into what actually matters. You can see that I absolutely love cybersecurity, and I can't wait to get my first position as a SOC Tier 1 Analyst junior position. It's fantastic. I love the rudimentary of it. I love the system processes of it. I love the fact that I can now do all my practice at home with, these log events before I actually go into the real world and do it. But let's have a closing thought, really. Artemis II didn't just fly to the moon. It demonstrated something deeper about complex systems. The stability doesn't come from eliminating signals. It comes from interpreting them correctly under uncertainty. And whether you're watching spacecraft telemetry or parsing security logs in a SOC environment, the skill is the same. Not faster reaction, but better judgment. Because in both space and cybersecurity, the hardest part is not seeing the signal, it's knowing when it's just noise. Thanks so much for listening to this out of the world episode, and I'll catch you next time.